So I thought I'd like to talk today about the ritual clothes that shamans wear. And the term that I use for those is a term that I've learnt from my Mongolian shaman friends who always call it their armor. So I'm going to say that right at the very beginning because I think inevitably I'm going to just use the word armor as shorthand without even thinking about it. So a shaman's armor. Now, um, shamans wear armor for a variety of reasons. They wear armor because shamanism can be dangerous, and it is literally armor, it protects them. And I think it's also important to kind of own the mundane sociological sort of aspect of it too. When a shaman puts on their armor, they are putting on a uniform, just like a policeman might put on a uniform. And if you're walking down the street and you see a policeman in his uniform, you know that they're a policeman. And it's exactly the same for a shaman. When a shaman puts on his sacred clothes, his armor, at that point, then he steps out from being Joe Bloggs and becomes Joe Eagle Blogs, the shaman, right? So it's like they are separated from their particular culture, and the shaman has to be separated. When they take their kit off again, they're just Joe Blogs. But at the point where they are putting their clothes on, their armor on, then they are stepping into a sacred role and they're seen by everybody in that sacred role. So there is that mundane kind of badge of office side to it. But there is a whole other side of the sacred to it and the kind of the sacred technicalities of it. Shamanism is sometimes described as kind of sacred technology, and there are these sort of ways of working which are kind of like a science in that respect. And putting on the armor is part of that. It's part of the whole kind of criteria of being in a shamanic role. So it's not something that happens very much in the West. Core shamanism, the stuff that kind of was developed by Hana and Sandra Ingerman and people like that over the years, it doesn't really rely a lot on armor at all. People may have a bandana, I've got a scarf on the floor here, nothing to do with shamanism, it's just a scarf, but they may, have their favourite scarf which they put over their eyes. And maybe they get to do that each time they go and do a journey, and so it becomes their kind of ritual scarf. It's their ritual bandana, and they use it. Maybe they wear it every day as well, but it's the one that they like. It's their favourite one, so they use it every time they go and have a chat with the spirits. So that's the simplest kind of shaman's armor that we have in the West. But people don't think of that as armor. They think of that as something to cover the eyes to help them when they're journeying in a room in the afternoon and it's sunny. I know some people who put on waistcoats, and they have special dedicated waistcoats that they just put on. Sometimes those are quite plain, normal waistcoats. Some of them have got little kind of amulets and things tied to them, and that looks a little bit more like kind of, shaman's costume type clothing from, say, Mongolia, where you've got kind of little amulets and things tied to it. But that again is borderline armor. They put it on. And the same with the bandana, because if you're using the same thing over and over again, it kind of forms a habit, and it creates something that in NLP is called an anchor. Now, an anchor is something that reminds you of a certain state. So if you, let's think, okay, every time you go to the bathroom, every time you go to the toilet, there is a kind of imperative instruction that you have learnt over the years to wash your hands, probably. So the washing of the hands kind of becomes an anchor, or rather, it's the other way around. Really, going into the bathroom is more like a kind of anchor for washing your hands. You know, you finish on the toilet and you wash your hands. That's a very crude way of looking at an anchor. And if you are wearing the same bandana all the time, then you kind of build up a psychological connection, relationship with it, so that on an unconscious level, you know that if you're wearing that bandana, you're off to see the spirits. And it's the same with people who wear a waistcoat or whatever it is that they might have around them that will remind them that now they're stepping into that sacred place. And it's exactly the same in a much bigger way with shamans, but there again is a lot more to it. Now, just about all shamanic cultures do this. There are a few that don't, but they're rare. And you know, from Siberia and Mongolia and down into Tibet and down into Nepal and across into Southeast Asia, and all of these cultures, they all have their own forms of armor, their own forms of ritual dress. They're all slightly different, and when you get up into places like Mongolia and Siberia, there's a similarity with them, and you need to know about the different tribes and the different traditions to be able to actually differentiate between them, but it is quite possible. So they stem from their kind of normal clothes. That's also part of it. They come out of their culture, and I think for people in the West that's quite difficult because we don't have that kind of culture. We don't have a long lineage of shamanism and shamanic practice, so we don't have a tradition of these ritual clothes, this armor. So it's kind of difficult for us to know what to do. So I'm going to talk about my journey with that, and I'm going to talk about my armor, and I will be interspersing it with little bits of films of traditional armor from different shamans as I talk about things. So I often kind of jokingly think to myself, if I was going to kind of create a shaman's armor that was to do with my own culture, then maybe I would go back into history and I would perhaps do something with perhaps a sort of peasant smock or something like that from Britain, because in a way that's traditional clothing. If you were perhaps thinking of the traditional clothing that people associated with Britain some years ago, it might be kind of bit like Monty Python, bit like John Cleese in the Ministry of Silly Walks. It might be kind of like a bowler hat and a suit and an umbrella. Those are traditional clothes, and so a shaman's ritual clothing stems from their culture. It stems from that, and like I say, it's difficult for us because we don't really have that, and therefore it becomes a bit false, or it can feel terribly false, a bit like dressing up, to put on clothes that look a bit like you're copying kind of like a shaman from Siberia or something. It's a real problem, and I've sat with that for a long time, many years, because I felt the need for ritual clothing gradually over the years, more and more, and yet I didn't want to copy something that wasn't from my tradition. I had to be authentic to me, and I would talk to the spirits about it, and I'll be honest, I didn't get huge information from them about it. I got some information from them, but it was all a bit vague, and so I kind of ignored it, and then I started to make things that I felt would be right, and then it patently wasn't right, and so I kind of threw it in the bin, and maybe another 2 years later I made something else. And it's been a gradual effort of trial and error for me to kind of get together my sacred kit, which has been, I guess, developing over the last Well, I suppose I started it 20 years ago, and I suppose it's really developed mostly now over the last 10. And it's developed because it needed to, because of the nature of the way that I work having changed. So let's go back to that. If you're doing core shamanism and you're just starting out and you are doing the core shamanic model of going down the rabbit hole and gamboling with spirit animals in the lower world and then coming back again, chances are you're not really going to need a lot of armor, because A, you're not likely to meet nasties, and B, the spirits are not really going to come into you. So you're dabbling or walking on the seashore a little bit. You remember in another video I talked about the different stages of being by the sea, from seeing it from a distance to walking on the beach to wading up to your knees to learning how to dive. And core shamanism, most people really, they don't get much further than splashing about in the shallows and maybe going up to their knees. And a lot of people just go up to their ankles, and that's fine. Not everybody is, going to want to dive deep, and not everybody is capable of diving deep. And if you're not diving deep, then there's not a lot of reason for actually having the ritual armor, because armor protects you, and you really don't need protecting. You're safe. Also, in core shamanism, the spirits don't tend to come into people. They don't tend to take people over and possess them in the same way that they do in traditional shamanism. And so it's less dramatic, and again, it's less dangerous. And you kind of keep more of a sense of yourself. When you're being possessed by the spirits, you lose your sense of self. The way that I describe that is that you drive your own car and you're in charge. And when you're in your own car, you're in charge. You've got the steering wheel. You know how to deal with the gears and where the brakes are, and you completely are in charge of what's going on as you go down the road. That happens even with kind of core shamanism. When a spirit comes into you, then all things change, and it's a little bit like you slide over into the passenger seat and the spirit is driving, and you at that stage could grab the steering wheel off the spirit and you could pull on the handbrake, and you can kind of got a bit of control of the car, not completely, but enough to be able to stop it at that point. You could even reach across and pull out the car keys. So that is, you kind of relinquish a little bit of control, but you've still got a lot of it. That's when a light trance happens. When a deeper trance happens, you are like in the back seat of the car, and that's much harder for you to kind of stop it. So the spirit is driving you at that point much more, and you are sitting in the back seat, and it's harder for you to do anything. And that's a sort of deeper trance. Now a deeper trance even more would be for you to be in the boot, the trunk of the car at the back, and you can feel the car bumping about, and you know that you're moving, and but you can't do bugger all about it. And that's an even deeper trance, and all you can do is kind of watch what's happening or experience what's happening. And then the final depth of trance is that you're not in the car at all anymore, and that's the sort of state of trance that some shamans go into, that the spirits come in and you go out, and you have no recollection whatsoever what the spirits have done until they go and you get back in the driving seat. And those are the different levels of trance. So if you're dealing with that kind of thing, that's even more dangerous. And so you do need the armor. You need to be protected, and you need to be kind of have a strong sense of self in your own kind of capacity, so that you can come back to yourself. And that's why the armor is there. The armor is also there to stop unpleasant spirits coming in. because you're very vulnerable. So it literally, it's like a castle. It's like a fortification around you, as well as being well, armor. Yeah, armor stops things banging into you. It stops a sword thrust or whatever, and so it's like that. But it's in that deeper state of trance. It's also like a portcullis and a great big wall all around you that stops things coming into your own personal castle, you as a being. So that for me has developed more and more. The need for that has developed more and more as I have done that more trance-like work. So I've talked enough about it. I'm going to share some of the things. So the very first piece of armor that I made for myself, which was a variation on the idea of the bandana across the eyes. I was finding it difficult, as most people do, to shut the light out, and so I made this for myself about 25 years ago. This is it's a fringed face covering, and I still use it. And I'll explain why and how I use it later on. But this is, it's simply, goes over. Okay, I'm not going to put it right down over my eyes because I got glasses on, but you can see the idea of it. And very easy to make. It's basically just a strip of cloth, and it's a fringe made of leather which I've painted red. Very simple. And that for years was the only bit of kit that I actually had. And like I say, I still use it. Now, let's stay on the whole idea of face masks then. About 15 years ago, this came to me. This is Mahabsha, and it's a Burat shaman. Burat shaman's face mask, hat, cap, whatever, from Buratia, which is the next little bit of country north of Mongolia. Buratia is one of the Russian Federation of states, and the people who live there are Mongols, like in Mongolia, but the way the world is nowadays, there are lines across it, and you step over and you're in a different country. So Buratia is the area around Lake Baikal, and as I say, Mongols live there, the Burat Mongols. Mongolia has got lots of different tribes, and the Burat are one particular tribe, and this is the headgear with the fringe face mask. Always reminds me of an octopus or a large spider, especially with all these tails at the back. This is the face mask cap of a Burat black shaman. Now these tails down the back, it's got these long streamers. They're really, really long. They go right down your back, and they fix on by buttons, so I could actually unbutton it if I wanted to. And there are 5 colours. There is yellow, and there is blue, and there is white, and there is red, and there is green. And that's the same colours, not in the same order, but it's the same colours that you get in Tibetan prayer flags. And basically it's the 4 directions and the centre, and the 4 elements and the void. If you look up prayer flags and look at the colours and things like that, you'll get that kind of information. So it represents the 4 directions and the centre of the 4 directions. And so I started to wear this, and I still do wear it quite a lot. The spirit eyes are kind of, well, they are literally the spirit eyes. And part of the Burat tradition is that you wear these to protect other people, because when you go into trance and the spirits come in and they take you over, then you are more frightening, and so you need to protect the people around you, so you hide your eyes, and these are the kind of substitute eyes. but you're hiding your eyes so that people can't see the eyes of the spirit when it takes you over. And that's a kind of common belief across a lot of Siberia. And these fringe face masks, they are terrifically useful. It actually has a quite a startling effect if I kind of put it on, because you'll see that it's almost like the eyes become real. Yeah, it's a strange kind of psychological effect. So I started to wear this, and then about 5 years ago, or perhaps a bit less than that, my spirits instructed me to make this, which is much more the Mongolian style, which is a sort of it's like a wraparound, and this has got eagle owl feathers on it. Some have vultures, some have eagle, different feathers, different medicines. So I wear this sometimes, and I wear my Mahabsha sometimes, and I wear the thin, small job sometimes. And that depends on the nature of work that I'm doing. If I'm just going to go and chat to the spirits about a particular thing, like maybe I got a new client who comes to me and I want to go and check out with my spirits whether I should be working with them, I will simply go in this, and I jokingly call it casual wear. If I'm going to do a really big piece of healing work for somebody, then I need much more protection, and so I kind of go in full kit. And full kit for me involves the black, where are we? I can't coordinate my finger. That black gown, which is a sort of it's actually a Manchu shirt, Manchu northern part of China. It's like a deal, it's like a Mongolian deal, but it's thinner fabric. I've worn shamans' deals. They're incredibly thick, they're incredibly heavy, and I don't live in a cold climate. So to have a traditional Mongolian shaman's deal, those thick coats, is too much. It's really too much in where I live. So I have that, which is thin cotton, and I put that on, and that is black because that's what my spirits have told me to wear. Some shaman traditions don't like black and they suggest other colours, but we all have to work with what we're told. So I put that on, and then I have other things which I also wear, and I'm in kind of like biohazard suit if I'm doing big work, because I need to be. Now, if I'm doing full work, I also wear this. This is a dudig. It is an apron. It's a shaman's apron. Shamans in Mongolia and the Evenk and other people in Siberia wear these. The theory is that they are part of the stylization of women's clothes. They're based on women's aprons, and a lot of ritual clothes of shamans seem to be, when you really analyze them, seem to be based on women's clothes from that culture. And as I said in another video, it seems very much from looking at linguistics and also things like this, that the first shamans were women, and so the male shamans kind of started to dress like women because that was part of what was expected if they were going to be a shaman. So this is a dudig, it's an apron, so I would put it over my neck and it goes on my chest, and it's hung with different objects, different things. There are birds, and there are kind of little shields here, and other bits and pieces. There's a representation of claws and other things. I quite often have coins on them. There's coins probably somewhere. Oh yeah, there's some coins there, which are used to bribe the spirits. different bits and pieces, jingles made of iron. And there's an old set of blacksmith tools, Shaman's blacksmith tools, that were given to me as a gift. Lovely old set. And bells, tiger bells. Tiger bells are a particular bell that you often find. I think they always look a bit more like frogs than tigers, but that's a tiger bell. So I wear that. If I'm doing intermediate work, I'll just wear my normal clothes and I'll put that on, and I will put on probably that, because that's all I need to wear. If I'm, like I say, if I'm doing really big work, then it's full armor, it's full kit, and full kit also includes boots. These are Dakhad boots. They were made for me as a gift by Dakhad shaman elders. Dakhad are another Mongolian tribe. They live on the border, or close to the border, with Buryatia. They live kind of way up in the north of Mongolia, and they're made out of a special animal. It's an antelope. I don't know what sort of antelope, but it is an antelope from Mongolia. And they have nagas on. These are snakes which represent the nagas, and again iron jingles. So that would be full kit. This is real biohazard stuff. So if I'm, like I say, if I'm doing big work, you need big kit. If I'm doing light work, just having a quick chat with my spirits, then I just don't need to be so formal. So you may or may not feel the need to do this, and your spirits will kind of inform you whether you need to get your own kit together. And it really does depend a lot on the way that you're working. If you're doing kind of deeper shamanic stuff, then you probably need it. What you don't need is stuff that is going to make you look big and impressive and kind of boost your ego and dressing up. You know, if you're doing shamanic work, it's not reenactment. You know, you're not doing kind of fantasy role play stuff. So you've got to do it from a position of absolute honesty and kind of no ego. And that's hard. I'm not saying that's easy. That's hard. You've got to be so ruthlessly honest with yourself about what you feel is the right thing and what the spirits are really saying to you about any ritual kit you get together. And you've got to be absolutely honest about doing it to the letter of what the spirits tell you. If the spirits tell you it's got to be pink with yellow stripes on it, you've got to do it pink with yellow stripes on it, because that's what they're telling you to do. And you can maybe negotiate with them and find out that, oh, okay, you've just got to have a patch over your elbows, the pink with yellow stripes on. But you've still got to kind of honour that, and you need to talk with your spirits. This is all about you building a dynamic relationship with your spirits so that you are able to communicate with them in a good way. I've got various things that I have had to do for my armor. I've had to put on different aspects. There's designs on the back of the thing over there in the corner, and those are to do with what the spirits have told me quite categorically that need to be on there. So you always obey the spirits. The spirits are the boss. You are just the spirits gopher. You're just doing what you're told. Yeah. Anything else is above your pay grade. So okay, so you got your kit together in whatever way it is, and traditionally it may be made for you. It probably would be made for you, rather than you having to make it yourself. And again, that's difficult here because there isn't the tradition. There aren't the people who know how to make things in a sacred way. There aren't the shaman blacksmiths that would be used to make all of the ritual metal work for a shaman's armor. And so you're going to have to improvise. You're going to have to find ways for you to collect the objects, or maybe you're going to have to learn dressmaking. I have had to learn how to use a thread and needle, and it didn't come easy. I don't like fabric. It's awful stuff. Leather stays where you put it when you're working with a needle and thread. It's easy, but fabric, it moves about like buggery, and it's got a life of its own. It's horrid. So, there's a whole learning curve with that as well. So I think I've talked enough, because this is half an hour, I noticed from my little watch thing on the front of my iPad. So I will do some more about this, because I wanted to talk about amulets and about empowering the armor and things like that, but it's just going to be too long in this video, so there's going to be a part 2. So I will see you next time. I hope you've enjoyed me rambling on about this one, and thank you for listening if you've managed to stay till this part of the video. Alright, catch you another time. Bye bye.